low number. I think the fact that we have some vacancies and some completed projects calls into question whether or not we should continue forward with acquiring more debt until those completed projects are in fact full. In looking at the advertised rents for the Uptown 1 project, there's a 3-bedroom that calls for $4,200 a month in rental income, and I think that is an unrealistic variable to factor into whether or not that project should have moved forward. That's a Chicago rent. That is not something that's viable in the town of Normal, and so to continue with plans for expansion of new projects when the assumptions themselves might not be valid for our community is questionable. And even in doing financial feasibility studies, you were always cautioned to look no further than 5 years because so many variables could change beyond that time frame. And I think we have to be sensitive to the fact that our economy is undergoing some changes and be mindful of that in taking on more debt.
Okay. I am really proud to say that I was a participant in the 2020 vision planning that was done in Normal. And a result of some of that planning is what we're walking in today. So I'm glad to see the results of the extended trail, the results of projects that make our community more vibrant. At that time, we were healthier financially. And so I do say that now, while we want to continue to grow and improve on our town, that we do it cautiously, that we watch that line so that we never step out of that recommended debt ratio, and that we look at the types of projects that we choose so that those are the projects that get us to our goal most effectively. Okay.
I'm a big believer in spending on your needs before your wants, and also with regards to debt, debt is not something we should strive for. I'm sure that most of us know people that have gotten a new credit card, and then they get way over their head in debt. They buy homes that they can't afford. Whenever you go to get a home, you sit down with your bank. And your bank says, you know, how much do you make? They look to see how much the house is, and then they weigh to see if it looks like you're going to afford it. Well, you know, at that time you might be able to, but then what happens if something happens with your job? You now get paid less, or in our case, we have less people contributing to the debt burden. We need to adjust our plans that we have to coincide with how many people we have to actually share in that debt load. 20 years ago, this was a different economy. Diamond Star was pushing cars out every few minutes. State Farm was growing, they were adding buildings. We had all kinds of population coming in. Electrolux was here, they were making vacuum cleaners. The internet hadn't really come around too much yet then. But now, Diamond Star's left. State Farm is moving people out. Electrolux have left. We are overtaxing and people are leaving. It's not affordable here. We need to adjust our spending down to coincide with that. I mean, that's my view.
Okay. Please, go ahead.
So I'm going to take a little bit of problem with the question itself, because ultimately a ratio is not going to matter for us. We determine our revenue, and so if we want to decrease the ratio but increase our debt, we just have to increase our revenue. We have some statutory limits on how much we can raise property taxes, but generally speaking, if we want more debt, we could raise that. And a single number doesn't make sense either. If we're being ticked off the way that we all hope it does, that could hugely boost our economy. And so $1 million worth of debt in today's economy versus $1 million worth of debt in an economy where Rivian is contributing tons of jobs, tons of new homeowners to our economy, that changes everything dramatically. What matters is that that's responsible, that we make sure that it's serviceable even in our worst case scenario, not just in our best case scenario, but also what matters is what we spend the money on, what we go into debt for. Right now, we talk about what happens in Uptown, but most of our debt hasn't gone to constructing buildings. It's gone, for the most part, to constructing parking garages. And so the question is, were the parking garages that we got worth what we put into them? And there are arguments on both sides. For example, I am out of time, so I'm just going to imagine what I would have said.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, so as far as the debt goes, less is better. No debt is great. I remember the pay-as-you-go years, but the pay-as-you-go years made what we have uptown currently available. If you wait till you have enough cash to buy a house, nobody would own a house. If you wait till you have enough cash to buy a car, nobody would buy a car. You just have to be smart about how you use your money, how you manage your money. The town has been very smart about how they've managed their money over the years. Thank you, Sonia, for helping make that happen. Thank you, Darcy and Kathleen, for continuing that conservative view of how you handle your money. A AAA bond rating is nothing to sneeze at. 5.5% debt ratio is nothing to sneeze at, and that's only going to get lower. The debt over the last 10 years, or last 2 years, is dropped by about $10 million. So I think we're doing okay. And as long as we keep thinking about having enough money for the future while taking care of what we got now, Norwal's only going to get better.
Okay. Alex and Carl?
So I sort of agree with a lot of what Joel was saying on the other end there. I'm going to sort of jump off where I think he was starting to go at the end of that. I do think that the 5.5% is a good number that we're at right now, but like he was sort of saying, we sort of control that ratio. I think what we need to be cautious of moving forward is sort of what I spoke to in my opening statement is like overdevelopment, right? So we need to be cautious of using TIF districts. It's worked out so far in Uptown, but I know that we're in the process of like looking to expand that TIF district even more. It was set to end, I believe, in 2026, and we're looking to like expand that another 12 years. I think that we just need to be really cautious on not focusing too much on now and sacrificing later. And TIF districts is something we need to be very cautious of moving forward.
Carl? What you gonna say?
Zero debt is a great place to be. Debt ratios are good, but as others have said, it's what do we spend it on and why? I first heard the argument of, well, we needed this debt to get some of the stuff we need for downtown when I was circulating petitions. And at first, I didn't have a response to that. Someone's commented you need mortgage for your house and oftentimes a car loan. I actually took out my first car loan last year. I paid cash up till then. But when people say, well, it's like you need a mortgage for your house. Well, people only live so long. The town has been around for much longer than any of our lifetimes, and hopefully will well past our kids have gone. Therefore, you have more time to save up to buy things. As far as comparing it to a mortgage, when somebody says, that looks like a mortgage. Well, that's nice, but how many tennis courts do you have, and how big is your swimming pool? Just because you can borrow money doesn't mean you should. If you are going to borrow money, it needs to be something that you know which is long-term return, and not just because we want it now, like some of your uptown buildings seem to have been. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna have one more question. Jason?
You might have time for a second question, because it might be able to get answered quick by everybody by just a show of hands. So the Brandt deal was a county project that did have to get approval by other units of government. I'm interested in if that deal or a similar deal came to the town of Normal, where there were incentives, but they were tied directly to jobs. If the jobs aren't there, the incentives wouldn't be there. If that deal came to the town of Normal, I would like to see a show of hands if you would vote for it. If your vote would be yes for it.
Okay, thank you, Jason. That was a nice easy question. All right, we will do one more. Yes, sir, your question.
I have a question. I know 7 of the 9 did not participate in the passing of the sales tax referendum back about 4 years ago. So my question is quite simple. Is how do you feel my return on investment has been accomplished? That we got a return on that investment. Is that 1%?
Okay, anyone care to answer that?
1 minute.
1 minute. Anyone care to speak to the?
I'll start. I would say yes. I mean, we have invented, and by the way, also, Mr. Chambers was there, and I did not mean to ignore him earlier when we were talking about previous council work, so I want to acknowledge Jason for his part. When you look at what we have invested in Connect Transit and County Mental Health specifically, and also economic development, yeah, I think we've gotten a good return.
Yes.
who sells stuff in many states and works with other people that sell big equipment. When we increase our sales tax for a business that operates in Bloomington and Normal, basically, we're pushing people to buy something from just outside of Bloomington and Normal where the sales tax is less. If you're selling a widget and that widget can be sold anywhere, you're gonna go online, you're gonna find out where you can buy that widget for the least amount of money. I think when we raise our sales tax, I think we're kind of short-sighting ourselves and making us more of a boutique community instead of going with, like the Walmart model, where you make your money by selling a lot. Make it back on value.
Anyone else?
If you're happy with the services, if you think we have good quality services, if you think we have an excellent police force, an excellent fire protection team, if you think, winter notwithstanding, that in general, you can get around pretty well and going to Normal, then yeah, I think the investment has been worth it.
Kathleen?
Okay, I'm married to a man who has never found a tax that he likes, and for that matter, he can't stand insurance rates either. So I live that world of knowing we have to be very judicious with our taxes. And I see a gentleman in the back who 4 years ago reminded me that for every tax you do increase, you're taking $1 out of somebody's pocket that could otherwise be spent in the economy. So whatever taxes we do have, we have to do so judiciously. And to that specific one, Jeff, we took as a community, county and city and town, step forward to fund mental health. That was probably a pretty forward-thinking step on a local regional level because we were realizing that state cuts had put us in a very vulnerable place, not the least of which was a jail that was out of compliance for being able to handle the kind of clientele. So we took a very bold step forward. I applaud our communities, and I put a S under that, communities, for taking step on that. If I may just say that the other piece of that I think was well spent was to shore up our public transportation. A number of us have talked about the importance of public transportation. That is key. I have done a poverty simulation last fall. I was out of transportation chits, and it is key. Those are two areas where I think it has definitely benefited.
Right. Anyone else?
I appreciate your question. It's the question that I have as a citizen. Does this tax benefit us? Does it impact us in the way that we hope that it will? And that's the kind of question I'll be trying to ask as a servant on the town council. One thing I do know is that every sales tax impacts us all differently, and that there are some in the community that are more harder hit by increases in sales taxes. And so I'll stay mindful of that fact. I also know that there are good things that can be done with tax revenue, and that when it's well and judiciously called for and spent, that we as a whole community do improve. I think in this instance, we all have. I'll continue to make sure that those are the kinds of things that we do.
I think he raised his hand first. Go ahead, Joe.
So first, I want to say, I think this ties into actually Mr. Chambers' question. Some people may have noticed me kind of at a half. And that's because when we give a property tax abatement to somebody like Brandt, hoping that they bring jobs, we end up having to pay back that tax somewhere else, right? And that means that we're increasing sales taxes, and everybody in the community pays to make up what Brandt should have been paying if they were paying their fair share. So we really have to do the calculation there. And like Pat said, these are regressive taxes. A sales tax impacts the poorest in our community more because they still need to buy goods than it does somebody who is well off and has quite a bit of disposable income. But finally, I haven't seen the return on our investment. I know one of the biggest pieces of that was mental health, but outside of the jail, I haven't seen where that money has gone, and I'm a little bit upset that it seems so much of that has gone to increasing mental health services at the jail alone. I want to know what else are we doing in our community, and I know we're struggling. This is a countywide issue, and yet I don't have clarity on that. So I have the same question that you do.
I want to piggyback off of one of the points that Stan made about, and Joel is too, that when we give concessions to one business or one entity, we are in fact taking it away from the opportunity to use it somewhere else. I've served on the governing body for churches in Georgia and now here in Bloomington. And one of the things, as someone who develops that church budget, you have to come together and agree on where you think all of the money should go. And part of my being an Episcopalian is that premarital counseling required us to discuss that. And our counselor was suggesting that we should go with a joint checking account. And we were two individuals that had our own mature budgets and so forth, but he said it forces those hard decisions. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice as Bloomington, Normal, and McLean County when we allow outside forces to come and speak only to one at a time and play both ends against the middle. That if we had a united front, we would not have to be raising taxes piecemeal.
I just need to say one thing. Whenever we give an incentive to a business that brings jobs in, when those jobs come in, these are brand new jobs to our community, those people need housing. The whole housing industry benefits from that. When those people come in, they need food. The grocery stores benefit from that. The restaurants in it benefit from that. Think of how many businesses you guys touch in a year. All the restaurants, everything, the shopping you do in our town. For every new person we bring into this town, you may touch 100 businesses. For every new person we bring in, they may touch and benefit 100 businesses in our town. That is the difference whenever we're looking at an incentive for a business that's bringing in new jobs versus one that is only reshuffling around jobs that are already here.
We've had many, I'm sorry, but I can see the wheels are turning and the energy is flowing.
They didn't get to go on.
Let me go ahead and let Carl to go ahead and speak, and then
The specific return on investment for the sales tax, I'm not sure. It mostly comes down to how is the money spent, because we have to get our money from someplace, whether it's a sales tax, property taxes, or whatever else. That mix is up for debate. Unfortunately, the state of Illinois is to some extent a laughing stock because people are moving out so much. I just want to make sure that Normal is not that way within Illinois as far as being overtaxed and overregulated. So we need to be judicious. Several people have cited Connect Transit. Connect Transit operationally loses almost $1 million a month. That's all subsidized with tax money, but that's coming out of our pockets. We need to try and be cooperative with private businesses and so on. I did some back the napkin numbers. You could give every Connect Transit user an Uber lift, and it would cost the same amount of money with less damage to our roads and no options for increasing taxes and other boondoggles that are being planned potentially, like the transit and downtown Georgia.
And
Okay, so real quick to jump off sort of what Pat, Joel, and Stan have touched on. Stan, I believe, was sort of speaking to people will go outside if sales taxes are increased. I do agree to some extent, but I also agree with sort of what Pat and Joel were saying. It's a regressive tax. The folks that don't go outside to find cheaper options are arguably the people who need it the most. They don't have the same sort of like access to education and resources that other people do, so they will pay higher and like those higher sales taxes regardless. So it's affecting them disproportionately. To touch on the mental health thing, I do think it's great. I do think you're seeing some improvement there, but I will argue that in my discussions, at least that I've had with county board members, it seems like it's disproportionately, I shouldn't say disproportionately, it's affecting Bloomington a little bit more than it's going to affect Normal. We're not going to have the same sorts of access to those resources that Bloomington is, and specifically, as Joel stated, the jail. So I don't see all of the mental health enough coming back to Normal.
all right, I thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for good comments and being open to taking. But I promise we are in. In fact, I hate the fact that I'm past the end. I want to recognize some of our elected officials, which I failed to do at the beginning. Our State Representative Keith Summer, we thank you for being here. We do have some of our county board members, George Wendt and Chuck Erickson, and is here, and our judge, Jason Chambers, one of our fine judges, new fine judges. We are grateful for you all taking part in this. And our Bill Casely. I knew there was another county board member here. So thank you, sir, for being here. And Mark Gentry. I'm sorry, Mark, and you're sitting right here in front of me. I'm looking at our regional board